Dean Blundell and Zev Shalev here on the FiveStack on Substack Live, counting down the top 5 stories of the day. We're crazy enough this week to do it every day this week. So, Dean, I hope you're get comfortable, and I hope you're excited to see me every day for the next 5 days.
Always excited to see you. The only really disconcerting part was watching you put on chapstick before we got on.
You call it
Very.
chapstick, I call it lip ice, and I did smother it on me. There it
You
is.
call it lip ice? Is that what you call it?
Lip
Lip.
ice from South Africa. That's what we used to
Oh,
call
is
it.
that's South African?
Yeah.
Does it have like an icy taste to it in South Africa where it doesn't hear?
It
Like
just sounds
what's
cooler. It just sounds cooler. Lip ice sounds
lip
cooler.
ice?
Yeah, and it's hot there all the time, so you want the cooling feel of a lip ice. This
Yeah,
time it's by Blistex. If you want to sponsor us, Blistex, there you go.
yeah,
Sponsor my
that's nice.
lips.
Sponge. It's just nothing can prepare you for two things in my mind if you're a man. Watching another man eat a banana or watching another man put on, as you pointed, lip ice. Right?
Yeah,
You're like, okay, what am I watching here? Like when I ever see a guy eat a banana, I do one of these.
really.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't know
come on,
why.
you're an evolved man. You're a metrosexual. You've
I
seen these things
am, I
before. You've
am, and I love everybody. I've
yeah.
got no biases. It's just this thing in my head where I watch it and I'm like,
It's a little phallic. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. But it's bananas are so good for you. You can't stop the men from eating them. They're good for magnesium and
no, man, the
omega
potassium,
6.
the,
Yeah.
the the cramps and stuff. I just wish guys would cut them up, right? Like just you cut them into
That's
tiny
that's very
chunks
girly
instead.
though. If you're gonna cut up your bananas, it's very girly. It's not right.
Hey, what's with the stereotypes, dude? What's
Oh, I
with the
know. True, 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 true.
Yeah,
I
come
gotta
on.
stop that. This is not what
Yeah,
we
you
do
do.
anymore. Or do
Yeah.
we do this now? I don't understand. Coming up, we're going to tell you if the Vance tapes that have been leaked about Elon Musk are they real or are they fake? You probably know the answer, but we'll reveal what we found out today. That's coming up. But first, our number 5 story of the day is all about green card holders. And so it seems the United States government is now asking green card holders, or is proposing that it will ask green card holders from soon. They haven't decided quite yet, to hand over their social media handles so they could take a look at what's going on in your
Yeah.
social media accounts. Officially, they're just saying it's to verify your identity, but knowing what we know about this administration, really they want to snoop around what you're doing on Facebook, on X, on wherever you are, Substack, and find out exactly what you're posting and are interested in. This is sending a chill down everyone's spine, and it's really having a chilling effect on the First Amendment rights of Americans and the first free speech rights of Americans. Many people
Yep.
concerned that they're going to get penalized because green card holders. I should know, I am one. Are actually protected by the U.S. government. We're considered U.S. people in the courts of law, and therefore they shouldn't be asking us to do things that they wouldn't ordinarily ask non-US green card holders and non-US citizens. But this is a tragedy and travesty, and really it's another sign that this administration has gone full flung into authoritarianism.
Yeah. Yeah, it's bizarre. Like I read that this morning and I knew you and I were gonna Substack today or do the FiveStack today, and I'm like, what the fuck does this mean? Like the green cards, you're going to check people's social media accounts. Anybody that is coming into the country that's applying for the green card, like I kind of get
So
that.
people
Like when I
who
read,
have green cards already, existing
well,
green
and
card holders.
that's really the shitty part of that equation, right? Like
Yeah.
when you go into the United States now, like if I'm a Canadian citizen, which I won't be going to the United States for at least the next 3.8 years, but when you go into the United States, they ask for your social media account, right? They want to know if you're talking about blowing up America. They want to know if you're talking about killing Americans. They want to know if you talk about smuggling drugs in the United States. And that I get. Like I'm a 9/11 guy, right? Like I was there, I saw it, I understand it. And there were warning signs on early, platforms and chat rooms about those guys that blew up the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and of course what happened in Pennsylvania. So I understood that, and I'm not a George W. Bush guy, but I understood, or George Bush guy, but I knew that. And so, when I read this article, I thought to myself, because I was just under the impression when I saw it, because you only get the actual, the layout of a tweet, and you can kind of see, oh, Trump's going to start, investigating people's social media accounts with green cards, and I'm like, oh, that's got to be because he'd never go to a million plus people with green cards, maybe more. I don't know what the number is, and go, okay, now we're going to have a look at your green cards. And if you said anything shitty about me, I'm sending you out of the country. But that's exactly what he's doing. Like,
Yeah.
that's the part that I had a hard time reconciling, Zev. And you've got a green card. I don't know the process. I'm a trusted traveler, so I can kind of go around the world and I have to show one card. I take my passport. But that was an involved process. But it would almost be like if you've got a Nexus card or a trusted traveler status, someone coming up to you going, listen, we need to have a look through your phone before you go, just in case you said anything really bad about the leader of the country that you're going to,
Mm.
because he's going to throw you in fucking jail or deny you entry to the country. That's what's going on here. So you've got gainfully employed, millions of gainfully employed people on green cards, H-1B visas, which also have green cards. Elon Musk operated on a green card for a long period of time. And what Donald Trump, if I'm reading this right, I could be wrong. I mean, you tell me. He's going to go back and retrofit people to see if they're actually capable of having a green card, even if they had one for years and years and years,
Yeah.
depending on what they're saying about him. Is that
Yeah.
not correct?
Yeah, this is exactly right. The policy applies to any legally residing people in the United States who have green cards. It means you could be living there for years, you could be having gainful employment, you could be a good, upstanding citizen, and
Yeah.
exercising your free speech rights and supporting whichever political party you want. But maybe you're not a fan of Donald Trump and you've said something in your social media accounts in the past or something like that. Well, you might be in trouble. And what that means is they might revoke your green card, may send you back home, wherever that may be. You may land up being a person with no country because you may not even have citizenship in your previous country if you're on asylum or for other reasons. So there is a really important thing here that he's doing, but mostly I think this is an attempt to sort of quieten people down on social media. They want people to realize that they're investigating people's social media accounts. We had that Shadow Dragon report earlier on with Olga last week and from the 404 Media, where they have this outfit called Shadow Dragon that is busy trolling your social media accounts right now and analyzing them with AI, figuring out what your political leanings are, whether you've said anything that are opposed to the Trump administration, whether you're loyal, whether you're disloyal. Now you apply that to all this information about what your green card handle is. That every green card holder is expected now to provide the government if this goes through. Well, you can see how they're going to use it. They're going to take all that analysis created by the AI, figure out exactly who you are, and then find a reason to either let you stay in the United States or revoke your green card.
Yeah, that's bizarre to me. I watched an interview with Jim Acosta on Substack today. He was interviewing a gentleman named Alex. He's a reporter, works at Axios, and he was talking about how the Broligarchs were jockeying for vice presidential position, meaning Elon Musk and Peter Thiel were all about J.D. Vance. Jeff Bezos' name came up. He was all about Doug Gobram or whatever the guy's name is, that sycophant that hated Trump and now loves Trump.
Yeah.
And you're starting to see why Trump partnered with the Broligarchy. You're starting to see why. Is because they had all the keys to all the AI. They knew what they wanted. He knew what he wanted. He wanted complete control of information warfare. But more importantly, he wanted people to stop talking about him honestly, right? He
Right.
wanted people to stop voicing of shitty opinions about how shitty of an individual is and how he's he's an insurrectionist and he's a traitor to the country and all those things. He's weak. He shits in his diaper. He wears way too much foundation. He looks like a fucking clown. Like that is actually, and I did a little research. The French researcher that got denied entry to the country who's going to
Yeah. Yeah.
a thing in Houston last week because ICE found some stuff or Border Security found some anti-Trump sentiment on his phone that he was talking to someone else about on a secure application in France.
Oh wow. So like
So
on a
that
signal or something like that.
yeah. It was, I believe it was Signal, and we'll get to Signal later on because they're going to experience a boon. But you can see why it was so important for Donald Trump to have access to what Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Peter Thiel had, their intellectual property, because he needed them. He didn't just need their money. He needed what they do so he could easily control a population with an algorithm where nobody had to put any work into it. He could easily control, which I believe is true, his reputation, or at least dial back what we know about him, which he's a rapist, he's an insurrectionist, he's a traitor, he's a criminal, he's a 34-time convicted felon, and he's human garbage. And so, this is a chilling effect thing. Like And part of me wonders if, in this the app that actually works, the Dragon app that you were talking about earlier, part of me wonders if this is real, or part of me wonders if this is just rhetoric to get people to be very fucking afraid to say anything negative about the guy.
Well, there definitely is real. The Shadow Dragon is already looking for Palestinian protesters using that Shadow Dragon application. But I think, this is both. I think this is both the chilling effect designed to make people nervous about what they post online, but also to make green card holders. And don't forget, many of those green card holders are likely from places that he is now not in favor of. He's not necessarily, this is not just affecting our enemies, it's
Yeah.
affecting our current allies. So the Canada, Great Britain, Germany, France, all these other countries that you'd never ever think that their green cards would be revoked. Well, now he's got a reason to revoke those green cards. So he could be pulling people out who might be currently working in any number of positions in the United States, in finance, in media. Just think about how many journalists there are, in Canadian journalists or other journalists working in the United States. The application here is quite wide. Lawyers and other sort of professional positions that just touch on politics, all those people who've got green cards, well, they're going to be reluctant to share their handles, I'm sure. But if they are, if they do hand them over, it could be really affecting the First Amendment in terms of the press, but also just in what people have said online, and who hasn't occasionally wanted to put a critical quote on Trump or something like that. In this case, it could really harm your livelihood. It could really harm where you live. And just think about our own world here, where we're on the air live every day. We're doing these Substacks. If people are supporting us, if people are subscribing to us, does that going to hurt them down the line? Is that an issue? Does that, help? Is another way to suppress media outlets and independent media for people to say negative things around this administration or report negative things about this administration? It's a real problematic policy. Now, it isn't yet in effect. It's open for public feedback until May the 5th. It's a good time to call your representatives and and senators and say that you're not in favor of this thing, that there's no reason for green card holders to be treated in this way. It's never been the case. They're U.S. citizens, they're U.S. Persons, and therefore should be protected like any other U.S. citizen.
It's like digital Stasi, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like that's really what we're talking about. Is there's an entire reality that lives online in the digital space, and if you've seen Turning Point, the bomb in the Cold War on Netflix, and the effort that Stalin, Brezhnev, Khrushchev, to a lesser extent, Putin, have put into being able to quiet dissent, from really innocuous positions of, I don't like that person, he's going to lead us to war, he's a piece of shit. It's not like they're leaking war secrets. It's not like people are saying anything negative about him. The French guy that got sent out of the country after he arrived and they found anti-Trump sentiment on his phone was effectively told, you can't come into the country because you said some nasty shit about our president. And you've got people at border security who will listen to that and who won't listen to that. That French guy just ran into a dude who will listen to that, really a real Stasi guy, right? Like
Mhm.
anybody who's a Trump guy that works for law enforcement is really part of, American KGB or FSB
Yeah,
at
yeah.
this point. And so what we're looking at now is the digitalization and the automation of really crazy Secret Service insider spy. It's digital spies, and then they give those digital spies give the names up, the content up of the people, and again, it's not like anybody's coming to kill the guy. It's people who just don't like the man, who are gainfully employed in the United States, supporting the economy, paying taxes with a green card. He doesn't even care about that. He cares, how are you making me feel and look? And that is the hallmark of a dictatorship. It's not like we've seen all the dictatorship stuff to this point, but when you're talking about someone going to jail or having their right to earn a living taken away because they voiced an opinion
Yeah.
that dear leader didn't like, and they were caught up by the digital Stasi, man, this is a whole other world when you're automating that kind of response.
As you really are pointing out there, the fact that this is AI driven, the fact that these, AI can run through thousands and thousands of posts in just a matter of seconds and figure out exactly what your political leanings are.
Yeah.
That's why this is so different. I mean, if you're just relying on the border guards, well, maybe that's easy to navigate around. But what we're talking about here is a very sophisticated AI that's autonomously roaming through the internet, looking at all your social media accounts, figuring out exactly where you stand on all these key issues.
Hmm.
and potentially stopping you from earning a livelihood, stopping you from living in a country, stopping you from receiving and exercising the rights as you would, as any American would, and then ultimately also being banished from that country to God knows where. It's really a horrific set of circumstances, and something we really have to watch,
Well,
especially
let me
if
ask you a question. Let me ask you a question.
yeah,
You worked in the States for a while. You had a green card, right? You understood that.
yeah.
Weigh that for me as someone who had strong opinions socially. Weigh how you would feel today if you read this today with a green card doing the job you were doing as the producer for CBS years and years ago. Weigh how it would make you feel according to trying to backtrack in your head about anything you may have said publicly or privately or any app or chat room. Like, how would that affect you today if you read that as a green card holder who didn't like that dick?
It's not even that. I mean, just in terms of just chilling, what you would do. Like if I was selecting stories or angles for the next day on the CBS morning show, which I was producing for 2 years. Obviously, in the back of my mind, if I knew that the government could pull my green card and send me out of the country, then you would think very carefully about what stories you selected the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a very, very chilling effect, and it's not only a completely unconstitutional. It's just tells you how small-minded this administration is and how corrupt they are. They know they're getting away with so much corruption. They're doing so much criming. They can't even be bothered to hide the fact that they're hiding, that they are instituting rules and regulations to stop people from revealing those. But that's basically what this is. This is a yet another attempt to hide their corruption and hide their criminality. And
Mm-hmm.
people shouldn't stand for it because, at the end of the day, it's only the free press really that keeps America in check right now. Every other part of the social construct, the political construct has been overtaken by the GOP, by Russia, you know. So it's the free press is so vital right now, and these kind of mechanisms that they now have to chill that affect to chill people's rights to speak openly about what they're doing and to do their jobs. Well, that's very sad. But
Well,
even
and
just
it gets you to think twice, right? Like you introduce doubt into somebody and fear, right? To someone who doesn't normally doubt or normally fear, who's a high performer, it ruins their life.
yeah.
I am one of those guys who used to shoot from the hip, used to be who I was. You have a bad experience, introduce doubt, introduce fear, and you're like, ooh, should I say this? Shouldn't I say this?
Yeah.
But you do that across the spectrum with your life. It's not just what you say or don't say on social media. You're going to start questioning everything you did because in the back of your mind, you're like, is that prick going to come for me? Is he going to arrest my family? Is he going to send me out of the country? Am I going to be destitute? Am I going to be? And then you start thinking about it in your current inception of your job, and you're like, especially if you're in media, as you were, and you're like, man, I mean, should we really be running this story? Like, is Trump going to come after me? He's going to target my green card, my livelihood, my ability to make money, which is kind of the genius stroke of something like this. It's not only is he going to do it, and people know he's going to do it, but you got millions of people. He knows millions of people with green cards in that country hate his guts, and so he's going to make them think, make them doubt, make them fearful, make them leave, and he's also going to put the fear of God in them and their families. And for a president or anybody like that to get off on that kind of stuff, and he gets off on this kind of stuff, he does because he's such an egomaniacal piece of shit. Um, it speaks to the value of his culture, but it also speaks to where that culture in the United States is going. If I had a green card today, and if I didn't like that guy, and if I know I didn't like him, and if I know I didn't say anything, I'd be fucking petrified today reading that.
I mean, look,
Petrified.
he's also threatening war. With Europe, he's threatening war with Canada. He's threatening war along the southern border. I mean, these are all indications that a lot of people who might be in the country with green cards, he might want out of the country just because he views them as the enemy now.
Mm.
So it's a real issue. But we should move on to story number 4, which is I don't know if you've been seeing the scenes out of Turkey. The
Whew.
uprising after the mayor of Istanbul was arrested and for apparent corruption, although none of us can really understand exactly if he has been doing any of the things he's alleged to have been done. But there are thousands of people protesting across Turkey right now in what is a really important NATO country, which has been sort of half of it's been in authoritarian world, half of it is still tied to democracy. Erdogan is not pleased because the Istanbul mayor was going to be the official opposition for his election coming up soon,
Mm.
and this is apparently why he's done it. So just weeks ahead of this man's officially becoming the candidate for the opposition. He's now been thrown into jail. It's not thrown into jail, sorry, arrested and accused of all these crimes. His name is Ekrem Imamoglu, and you're going to want to hear a lot about him. He's Turkey is a mess right now. The protests are everywhere, and it's another indication that when these authoritarian governments come into hold of a democracy like they did in Turkey, it's very hard to get rid of them. And when you have legitimate political opposition like Mayor Imamoglu is, imagine what happens if our next candidate for the Democratic Party is suddenly accused of crimes just weeks before they become the official candidate. It's not something that's hard to imagine because it's happening right now in Turkey.
Yeah, and the really funny part is that Donald Trump is sort of patient zero for any criminal that knows he's a criminal. The rest of the world knows he's a criminal, and you get those seeds of doubt in your mind because that person so vehemently defends himself against it. So you never really know who's guilty and who isn't. But in terms of Turkey, how that plays out is fascinating to me. And Turkey's this anomaly in the world. It's not quite well. It's not it's a dictatorship in terms of different aspects of services in that country, whether it be the media. Medical tourism is a big deal in Turkey. There's really no freedom to be able to speak out against the government, but you still have freedom to speak out against the government. It's how you do it. It's sort of America, like if Donald Trump was the president for 10 years and he had to stop at a certain point. That's what Turkey is. Turkey is this, like I said, a collecting pot. It's an old Ottoman Empire city. I mean,
Yeah.
we Istanbul, Constantinople. We know what Constantinople meant to that region. And the history in that region is goes back thousands of years. But it's an amazing thing when you see someone get arrested who holds liberal values. That was his crime, right? He's got liberal values. He loves democracy.
Yeah.
He wants to be able to, and I read a little bit about him today. He wants to be able to give people a voice, media a voice. He wants, more freedom of the press, that kind of stuff. And if you know anything about Erdogan, he's like, actually an older, shittier version of Donald Trump, but he's actually a deal maker who understands how to stroke the taint of dictators in the area, how to do the same thing to democratic countries. Like you would think Turkey, knowing what you know about how garbage Erdogan is, you would think that in no way, shape, or form would he be siding with Ukraine and Zelensky, but he is. But the reason why he's doing it is because he understands if Ukraine has an embarrassment of rare earth mineral riches, and he's going to take that tact against Russia because Russia's not going to attack Turkey anytime soon. Turkey is no shrinking violet when it comes to military
No, they're
prowess, right?
rebuilding the Ottoman Empire right now. They've
Oh yeah,
taken over Syria. They've taken over Libya, not directly but indirectly.
yep.
That Ottoman Empire is growing back, and Erdogan is the emperor, so he's not keen to see any opposition, and that's why these are actual crimes of corruption they've placed against this mayor. They include leading a criminal organization, accepting bribes, extortion, unlawfully recording personal data, and they should talk to Donald Trump, and interfering with public tenders in terms of bid rigging. But who knows whether these are trumped up charges? They likely are. It doesn't look like this guy was really involved, but there are 25 witnesses that say he is, and that's what they're going to try to do. They're going to try to discredit him so he can't run against Erdogan, so he can remain the emperor. The emperor of the new Ottoman Empire, which is it seems to be the game we're playing around the world right now as everyone's rebuilding their empire.
Well, and that's the importance of media. And let me just get. And
Yeah.
any good dictator knows that, right? Any good authoritarian knows that if you control the information superhighway, you control the media, you can drive really any result. You can make anybody guilty. If again you watch Turning Point, the Rosenbergs sold a bunch of nuclear secrets. Roy Cohn, who is the lawyer for for the government of the United States that put away the Rosenbergs. Mr. Rosenberg was guilty. Mrs. Rosenberg did nothing. But they literally created this narrative out of nowhere around her so they could put her to death too. Right. So, like we don't, this is what I get so frustrated about when it comes to democratic values, democratic parties, democratic groups, lobby groups, is if you truly believe that shit, you would do what the people on the right and what really, really successful dictators do. They control the information other people get. right? So you would want to control all that information so everybody could get the information anytime they wanted, so you could drive an actual result that made sense, that was fair, that was democratic, that was engineered for human beings, wasn't engineered for a few human beings, right? And that's the part that kills me to this day, is that, you talk about this one story, just as a quick aside, whether it be right or wrong, in the millions, it's not thousands, it's millions of people in the streets of Istanbul that are protesting against Erdogan for this gentleman, who seem to understand that this gentleman who got arrested is just a really good guy who's done a great job being the mayor of Istanbul, who wants to move to that next level, and he wants to give Turkey back to the people, not to religion, not to ideology, but to the people, if you've read anything about this gentleman. But like Turkey, like Russia, like China, like North Korea, and increasingly like the United States, if democratic powers don't at some point get control of information, don't shut out the people who want the information and the way for people to get that information. Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, they're not good people. Chatham Asset Management owns most of the daily newspapers up here. 66% owned by Chatham Asset Management in the United States, a MAGA asset like David Pecker. They understand the importance of being able to control the narrative. Democratic processes do not. Liberals just assume that people are going to say, "Oh, well, you're nicer, so in the end, we're going to win." No, 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 no. At some point in time, yeah, at some
Got to play
point
the
in
same
time,
game.
yeah, absolutely, you do,
So,
you
it's
do.
really interesting. I should mention, because you mentioned Roy Cohn, and I haven't probably told you the story. It's a bit of an aside, but I should. The reason we have Donald Trump today is largely because of Fox News, I would say. And Fox News became a thing in the United States because of Roy Cohn. He was good friends with Rupert Murdoch way back in the 80s, and he struck a deal with Ronald Reagan, basically, that Murdoch would give Ronald Reagan positive coverage in his newspapers in exchange for Murdoch dropping some of his FCC regulations and allowing Murdoch to buy different stations, but also ultimately to set up Fox News. And so Roy Cohn, good friends of Donald Trump all those years, is ultimately the reason that we have today
Yeah.
Donald Trump at all. And so you talk about controlling the narrative. That man knew how to do it, but he also knew how to set up the establishment and the institutions that he wanted to do it going forward. And so, he was smart enough to know that they needed the news networks, they needed a Murdoch to have a heavy hand in that, and and Reagan and the Republicans knew they needed that too, so they cut the deal.
Yeah, yeah, and Roy Cohn, interestingly enough, was, you ever heard of McCarthyism? Senator
Of course.
McCarthy? Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was his McCarthy's protege, second in command, the guy that was driving the legal bus, the guy who was responsible for most of those hearings. And if you watch the last McCarthy hearing, Senate appearance, where gentleman across the aisle says, "Have you no decency, sir?" and McCarthy starts sweating, Roy Cohn leaves. He's such a fucking coward. He was before he died. And to that point, I mean, as much of a terrible human being as Roy Cohn is, as much of a terrible protege as Donald Trump is, they got it. They understood it. You control ratings, you control the information, you control that atmosphere, you can do anything you want.
And the irony, of course, is that he died of AIDS and hid that all his life. He hid
That
his
he was
whole,
gay, yeah.
yeah, and he hid his gays because he was able to control the narrative that much. Some people speculate even that he and Donald Trump had an affair. Who knows? I don't know if that's true. I doubt it, but it's out there.
I
Um,
have never heard that, but I love that rumor. I'm going to
it's just a
perpetrate it as
rumor.
much as
Just
I
a rumor.
can.
It's not true. Don't fuck with my green card, please. So, number three is the Canadian federal elections. They're
Yeah,
off and running in the hottest election ever in Canada. Mark Carney is now the prime minister, of course, and he's also the leader of the Liberal Party, and he's running for his first elected office. It's still quite close. I mean, as I look at the latest polling, it's still 39% to the Liberal Party, 37 to the Conservative Party, and there's a 4% margin of error on that, so they could go either way. In the seat projections, it looks a little bit more comfortable for the Liberals, where they look like they're going to lead by 178 to 130. But who knows how that's going to go? You got a better eye on this.
yeah.
What do you think?
Um, I wrote a piece today. If you go to my Substack, Dean Blundell Substack, Canada's 30-day election showdown, character versus assholes, winner takes the free world. The reason why I wrote that is because Mike Myers and Mark Carney sat down in a hockey rink, Canadian flag in the background, really simple set. It wasn't performative. It wasn't one of those, mock up Pierre Polyev. Let's get a
I mean,
flag and 28 people around us
they
to
were
look
wearing
like a
hockey
sport.
outfits. I don't know if that wasn't performative. I mean, it was performative, but
Well, no, but it's just two guys. They're wearing hockey outfits, but there's just two guys like they're wearing jerseys, sitting
yeah,
down
yeah,
talking. And Mike Myers, there's a point in this thing where Mike Myers says Canada's always been the country that stands up to bullies. And Mike Myers is one of our great Canadian exports. Yes, he's lived in the United States for a long period of time because of what he does. But Mike Myers is an immigrant from Scotland. Like I'm an immigrant from England. Like so many of us are immigrants to this country that have experienced the ability to achieve things that we would never have been able to achieve in the countries where we immigrated from. And it dawned on me when I was watching this video that that's what's at stake here. In really simple language, are we going to be bad or are we going to be good? Because what you're watching is the United States turn bad. And it makes everybody in the United States feel like shit about themselves that didn't vote for that guy. It's like that old skit where are we the baddies? Like where the Nazis look at each other like, we got skulls in our hats and we're hurting people. Are we the bad guys? That's traditionally, very simple thinking, but it's also really what's at stake. And so, what we've seen over the past, I would say, 6 weeks since Trump has introduced himself to Canada by way of saying, I'm going to take you, I'm going to take your country, and you're going to be the 51st state. We're going to minimize you, and whoever your leader is will just be the governor for us for that territory. The enormous sense of pride and nuclear shift and the unity in this country has been world changing, perspective changing, life giving for people like me who were so tired of the dirge and reporting on, are you going to vote for a liberal or are you going to vote for a conservative? Are you going to vote for this guy, who's 52 and he's been at it for 10 years? Are you going to vote for this asshole who has a terrible, resume and he's a populist like Donald Trump? Speaking of, Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre. And Pierre Poilievre is literally a terrible fucking human being. He's got the character of a serial killer. He's an awful human being. He's Trump light is what he is. He's Timu Trump. So, that's really what's at stake here for the first time in Canada's history. It's not about what ideology or perspective or group you're going to vote for. It's, are you going to vote to keep our country intact or not? Are you going to vote for Mark Carney or not? Because the or not is a guy named Pierre Poilievre who was not only lauded by Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Alex Jones, Jordan Peterson, the same cabal of rejects who put Donald Trump in the office, Steve Bannon. Not only have they been lauded by him, they've been boosting him. They've been supporting him. They've been helping him. Let me draw your attention back to a 60 Minutes, or maybe it was a Laura Ingraham interview where she says to Donald Trump, hey, do you like this guy, Pierre Poilievre? And he's like, no, he's not MAGA enough for me. Okay? He says that. He goes, I'd rather deal with a liberal. They're way easier. He didn't know Mark Carney's name in that moment. Not only that, I have it on very good authority that the powers that be in Canada for the Conservative Party contacted MAGA World and they said, do us a solid.
yeah.
Take the Trump stink off of Poilievre because he's lost. That's okay.
Yeah.
Because our guy has lost in the neighborhood of 100 polling points based
Because
on
of you.
because of Donald fucking Trump. So can you do us a favor? And this is not only accurate, this is true.
Yeah.
I've since vetted this information. Is that Donald Trump doesn't do anything for free. Someone had to make a peace offering to Donald Trump.
Are you serious?
Yes. And then not only
pay him?
Oh, that's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Oh my God.
There
He
had
took
to be
the bribe for it?
some
Oh
kind
my
of
God.
arrangement where he was like, I don't care if Pierre Poilievre wins. I'd rather deal with a liberal. They're easier. And within and timing's everything. Within something like 8 seconds of Donald Trump saying that, Pierre Poilievre puts out a tweet. He goes, you heard it here first, folks. Trump doesn't want to deal with me because I'm going to be really hard on him. Now, here's where that gets funny. Mark Carney's resume is the greatest resume in the history of any leader who will ever run a G7 country ever.
Yeah.
He's
pretty accomplished.
Dude,
He's done some things.
He's the balls, if you will.
Yeah.
He's the political balls. He's the guy that everybody's like, oh, fuck, thank God there's an adult in the room, because Trudeau really wasn't that much of an adult. He was just a performative prime minister who really wanted everybody to be nice to each other. That doesn't work like that. So now we've got the damage that Trump has done now that everybody understands this, and the receipts of how many times Donald Trump and MAGA world has promoted Pierre Poilievre or boosted Pierre Poilievre or put Pierre Poilievre on Fox News, or Elon Musk is like, that's the guy that needs to run the country. That's the guy. I mean, we all know it's a work. We all know it's an op. We all know it's not
Yeah.
real. But here's the catch. Canadians are so fucking much smarter than Americans. Pardon my American
Hey
friends.
now, hey
No, it's
now.
true. Canadians are so much smarter. We already knew that was work. The second it happened, we're like, wait a second. There's like 1,000 other fucking receipts of MAGA world going, Pierre Poilievre needs to be the next prime minister. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Sorry, I'm ranting and raving, but I'm
No, it's
flowing.
okay.
So here's where it gets even more interesting, and this is fascinating.
Mm.
One of Pierre Poilievre's proxies is the premier of a province in Canada called Alberta. Her name is Danielle Smith. She's full MAGA world too. She went to Mar-a-Lago, tried to kiss the ring. Trump gave her 5 minutes at the hot dog stand between 18 holes of golf, and she's like, "I'm here doing the work of people," like Kevin O'Leary-esque bullshit, and like legitimately. She goes on Breitbart the other day.
Yeah.
This interview's fascinating. She goes on Breitbart the other day, and she puts out into the ether begging Donald Trump to stop the tariffs just for now because it's killing Pierre Poilievre's chances, and she really wants him to win because, and I quote, and this is the fucking truth. Go look this up on Breitbart, Danielle Smith Breitbart, because Pierre Poilievre is aligned with the new vision of America.
So she blows the whole thing.
Not only did she blow the whole thing, and I'm dying laughing reading this. I'm like,
Yeah.
you guys so fucking stupid. Like,
That is so stupid.
Yeah,
really,
Maple
really
Maga's.
seriously.
Maple
You said
Maga's
Americans were not as smart as Canadians, but then you got Danielle Smith. So
oh no,
I don't know.
I didn't say she was smart.
I don't know if you could say that statement. It's
I didn't say she was smart, but what I'm saying is that I think our Maple MAGA is just a tick dumber than the other MAGA down in the
that I'm willing to explain. It's just not as accomplished at lying yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very funny. Look, it's a hot race. I wish people turned off Twitter and turned off X for the next 37 days. I think it's having a damaging effect on the electorate. And my only thing is that I worry about a lot more disinformation coming Canada's way over X, and it's dangerous, and people should try ignore it as best as possible. That is our number 3 story of the day. What was the number 2 story? Hegseth, of course.
Oh, Petey. Yeah, he fucked
I
up.
mean, here's Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth.
Petey fucked up. Petey fucked up, Zev.
Can you believe he doesn't get into trouble for sharing confidential, top secret U.S. war secrets on a chat group. But they want social media handles of green card holders so they can monitor what they've said. This man, nothing happens to him. He's disclosed, the operational details of this attack by the Americans on the Hutu in Yemen over Signal to a group of people. And then he includes, because just for good measure, he includes a group of reporters. It includes Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, which is probably the most thorough magazine around, which does investigative work around the Trump administration. And so, obviously it's a giant breach of security concerns, but it's also, this operation was just beginning to get underway. It put American troops in danger. It jeopardized the entire operation. And ultimately, it is just showing you how useless the new defense secretary is, Pete Hegseth, who decided to share all these operational secrets on Signal.
It's got to be one of the great stories to come out in the first 2 months of what a cacistocracy looks like. Where you one dictator who's stupid hires dumber people than him around him to carry out the business of the nation. It's legitimately called a cacistocracy. Dude, who'd have thought? Hiring a broadcaster.
A weekend broadcaster at Fox,
hiring a weekend broadcaster at Fox, not even a full timer. Who'd have thought?
Part-time alcoholic, perfect for the job.
Guy who's been, arrested a couple times for public drunkenness and beating up women and, sexually assaulting other people. Hey, who'd have thought, that would be a bad choice for Secretary of Defense? Listen, this is hilarious to me. Like, I've read a bunch of reports where unnamed senators and congressmen were like, "Are you serious? This is a brief." I'm like, give me a fucking break. Yes, of course they're serious. They hired a broadcaster with a drinking problem who sexually assaults people. He's got 12 kids, and he hasn't been able to hold a job and straight for like 5 years ever in his life. to be the Secretary of fucking Defense for the most powerful nation of the world.
Yeah.
And the details make me laugh. Where the guy from the Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, who's a tremendous reporter, gets added to a signal group by Mike Waltz and Pete Hegseth. And I've seen the text. I've seen the signal text. And they're like, we're going to start the bombing run on the Houthis tomorrow. And they're doing like, these like muscle emojis with like thumbs up emojis. And then JD Vance, and this is great. JD Vance is like, I'm not sure President Trump understands what's going on. So they out President Trump in this stupid thing.
Oh my God, he really said that on that chat group?
Yeah,
He probably
yeah.
didn't.
I don't think he really gets what's happening here. But anyway, I'm with you guys. We just need to convince him somehow. He gave us the green light. And that was also concerning, where he's like, we got the green light for whatever we want to do from Trump. And you're like, wait a second. The same guys that are putting out war secrets on Signal and sending them to reporters at the Atlantic 2 hours before the war starts, 2 hours before the war starts, top secret military intelligence are like, by the way, Trump's letting us do whatever the fuck we want. We got a green light. So let's have some fun. But at the end of the day,
God.
which is a really terrible cliche thing to say to kind of put a bow on a conversation about how the Secretary of Defense included one of the most important unbiased reporters in a signal group chat, not even using this program the U.S. government uses called HiSide. I don't know if you've heard, it's called HiSide, where it's a secret app where you can have encrypted exchanges. They're
Okay.
like, fuck HiSide. Let's just go straight to Signal. It's like conducting a war in your DMs on
Yeah,
Twitter,
yeah. I mean,
where you're
Signal
like,
is not as safe as people think it is. But also, this is the same guy. This is Hegseth. Is the same guy who's currently drawing up operational plans to invade Panama, and he's also responsible for building a demilitarized zone along the southern border with the Insurrection Act as cover, and is potentially going to be the one attacking Greenland and Canada. The same dude.
we
Maybe
should
he'll
be
be this.
fine.
You should be no problem. Everyone needs to get into his Signal account because I'm sure he'll share his accounts, his attacks. Imminent attacks on Canada when he's ready to do that.
Well,
It's a
this is
joke.
why I'm not, dude. This is why I'm not that worried as a Canadian,
Yeah.
because even if they get out of America's Civil War, which I think is coming,
Oh,
the incompetence, the sheer incompetence of the people that run that country, and every mistake they make and every embarrassment they have is going to add up, and they're going to start feeling, I don't know if I don't know. Dude, they are too stupid. American government, the way is it set up, they are just too stupid to do anything
this American
ineffectual.
government for sure.
Oh
You know,
my
do you see that?
God.
Cash Patel fired 1,000 ATF personnel today. 1,000 because he's the acting head of the ATF right now. I mean, these guys are supposed to be anti-crime, anti-terrorism, and strong on the border, but he fired 1,000 ATF
Yeah.
people today. It's nothing. This doesn't compute. The number one story on the FiveStack today is all about this video or audio, at least, of JD Vance. You've seen or heard this video,
Yeah, it's
or it's
awesome.
audio already. It's him basically being very critical of Elon Musk. I don't have the exact stuff. Oh, here it is. I can tell you in a second. He said on the video, on the audio, that Musk makes the administration look bad and criticizes his actions as a special government employee, but he does it in this great, over the top, very good voice that sounds a lot like JD Vance. The audio also mentions Musk's South African origin and accuses him of acting like an elected official,
Yeah.
despite not being one. And JD Vance on the tape says, "I'm the elected official. I'm the important one." Only it turns out this really isn't JD Vance. Sorry
Yeah.
to ruin this for everybody, but it's not really JD Vance. It's a deep fake created by AI. Some of the authenticity tools out there gave it an authenticity score of 9 out of 100, but it sounds so good. You want it to be true because it sounds like something Vance would say if he had a spine, but as it turns out, not true.
Yeah, and it really upset me that it wasn't true. Like there's different pieces of information. This is the problem that a lot of us have that deal in content in the social media age, where you hear something like that, in the AI social media age, where you hear something like that, and you're like, oh, it's got to be true. Sounds exactly like him. Where he's like, here's the problem with Elon Musk. He's South African.
Yeah.
Great men of this country line these halls, and he doesn't. He's not even elected. I'm elected. I'm important. That's
Yeah.
when I was like, yeah, this can't be true. Then
Yeah.
you do a little research, and you come to realize that it's probably AI and it's not accurate. But you know, the sword cuts both ways, right? Like, the
Well, the funny thing
damage
is,
the damage that was done,
yeah,
from what I understand, on the inside between Elon and JD, who didn't at the time know that it was AI. And apparently, JD Vance was like racking his brain trying to think of where that recording might have happened.
Yeah.
From what I understand, because Elon sent him a note, or his people sent him a note going, "You talking shit about me, bro?" And JD's like, "I don't think so." Like, you're like,
Well, I mean, the
right?
stupidity of it all, because like JD Vance was put in there by Elon Musk. He and Peter Thiel basically hand selected JD Vance to be their operational guy inside the White House, and he basically is. Donald Trump doesn't care so much about what's happening operationally. JD Vance is giving everyone the green light, and they've got direct ties. He's got direct ties to Thiel. He's got direct ties to Elon Musk. Has had for a long time. They selected him, and that's why he became the vice president nominee for the GOP. So it's unlikely he is shitting on his boss, because really, in this case, I think Elon Musk pulls all of JD Vance's strings.
Yeah,
However, it is true that Elon Musk is kind of destroying the reputation of this administration. That up until now he's been a real disappointment to everybody, and probably shouldn't be there. I mean, it tells you the kind of power this man must have over these guys, because under any other circumstances, Donald Trump, famous for firing people, would have
yeah.
fired this guy a long time ago.
Oh, I totally agree. I think that, just based on the fact that he gets most of the airtime and Donald Trump is number two when it comes to who's paying attention to who, he would have been gone like in the first week had Donald Trump not transactionally been able to get his money to help him get across the line. But dude, again, we're talking about, and this is, for a lack of a better way to say it, we're trying to breathe seriousness into a group of people who are wholly unserious.
Mhm.
They're just in it for themselves, in it to outrun crime, in it to outrun insider trading, in it to outrun all kinds of stuff. And to the point of JD Vance, where Elon Musk and Peter Thiel advocated for him to become the next vice president, they didn't do it because he's got a mind of his fucking own. He's a guy that wrote a book about humping couches in his mom's Vicodin habit, for
That's
fuck's
not what
sakes.
he did.
So,
Okay.
so you know what I mean? Like,
It's a
they
good
didn't.
book.
Well, I'm just sure it's a good
Yeah.
book. I haven't read it. I think there's
Yeah.
a movie about it. I might watch the movie, but
Oh.
there's no way I'm going to sit down and read Hillbilly Elegy to give him the time of day where he talks about hardworking Americans in the coal belt, where he's including things about, yeah, me and my friends, we used to get lonely and just fuck couch cushions. Like, I don't know anybody that didn't do it. Like, so like, again, I go back to this whole thing, and I hate to do it, but these are wholly unserious individuals that are in charge of, and it should scare the shit out of people, but it should also make people feel a little comfort. Like, how much damage can these
Well, how much
guys?
damage? Today, they can, as part of canceling USAID, they canceled $500 million that was being used at US food banks. So
It'll
now
get
Americans,
reinstated.
yeah,
It'll get
yeah,
reinstated. Like, USAID
maybe,
got
yeah, right. But
reinstated. Like the Department of Education is going to get torn down and built back up because the judge is going to come in and go, "You can't do that." Like, we fret a lot,
yeah,
and I'm here not only to insert some realism, but also calm people down a little bit. You've got the dumbest fucking people in the world and the biggest bullies in the world. They are going to run out of runway. Like,
yeah.
you're watching it happen, and I know a lot of people are scared. But all the subjects we've talked about today, minus the seriousness of the importance of the Canadian election, um, we talk about them in these ways where we assume that people robed with such power are able to do this, and they are. They're able to cut programs, destroy institutions, all that other stuff for a bit, for a little while, until the circus comes to town. And this circus that we're watching right now is the circus of stupidity, the circus of kakistocracy. We're watching the circus of incompetence, and it is becoming everything that we said it would become. Everything that we said it would become. I just don't know how much damage they're going to do along the way. That's
Well, that's the
going
thing.
to, yeah, that's
There's a
going
lot
to
of people are
encourage
losing
other
their
people to get in
jobs. A
the
lot of
country.
people can't feed their families. A lot of people are nervous about their neighbors losing their jobs.
Yeah.
The simple things that they might have been reliant on happening, like just be visiting their local parks or anything like that. But certainly, this food bank situation is a terrible situation.
Awful.
It's affecting people who can't afford to these kind of losses, who live week by week. And we've seen this is just really a giant transfer of wealth from the very, very poor to the very, very rich. It's really disgusting what's going on. And you're also seeing, undocumented and sometimes citizens who are being sent into these weird detention facilities outside of the country. There's reports of violence at another detention facility that's well overcrowded in Florida right now. These are inhumane kind of situations that people are being subjected to. Canadians as well, Germans, French citizens also being subjected to this kind of stuff. So yes, on a grand scale, we'll probably be able to reverse all of this, and they won't be able to get so much through. But the damage
Yeah.
being done right now is quite large. Damage being done to the reputation of the United States is kind of insurmountable in some ways. And the fact that Americans who should be growing their wealth right now, who should be having they're all at points in their lives where they are hoping their investments do better, those things are crumbling around them. Their futures seem like they're crumbling around them. There's a great uncertainty around the future. I mean, I think that there is enormous, hopefully this is correctable. Hopefully ends somewhere. But I think the average human being in America is feeling the pain right now, and it's quite serious.
Yeah, it is, and the pain isn't just material pain. It's mental and emotional anguish, right? You're wondering when you're going to lose what, if you're going to be able to feed your family. You've seen grants get pulled. You've seen, with executive orders, to your point, with USAID, where farmers have gotten the shaft and they're going to have to sell their farms. So there are real tangible consequences. Whether or not this becomes a permanent reality for Americans, is up in the air. I mean, I don't put a lot of faith in the follow through of people like Donald Trump, who's failed at everything he's ever done, with the exception of being propped up for success by other people. But I shudder to think that if the Trump administration had competent assholes, like
Mm.
really competent people who could make a case for what they're doing, bulletproof cases for what they're doing, not stand up there like Nosferatu, Stephen Miller talking about dumb shit, or Elon Musk talking about dumb shit, or JD Vance sending his wife to Greenland for some kind of diplomatic mission. Like, we're seeing craziness go on
It
in
was
the United
crazy,
States.
yeah, yeah, but it's there's a lot of damage, and I think that the reality of it is, with these guys, if they continue to be allowed if these to continue this whole term, it's going to get more and more damaging. You remember the first term, COVID came out of the blue. Well, it came out of the blue just when people were so tired of everything he was doing. But then, the fact that he basically allowed it to happen. We don't know what these guys have in store and what their enemy friends Putin and Xi have in store for America. There could be a lot of stuff coming that we're not yet seeing, and we're allowing ourselves to have our guard down with this CDC and the FDA not even able to report currently on outbreaks that are happening in the USA. I mean, there's a lot that is in the unseen, but there's a lot that could still be happening. We don't even know what's going on with crypto. We don't know what's going on with the gold in Fort Knox. I mean, there's just a lot of big question marks that people have about what's going on. And as the FBI becomes controlled by these goons, and you've got these judges under constant pressure to not be so activist, or the so-called activist judges, even though they're not. I mean, I think that there's just we could go quite far down from where we are right now. Certainly, right now, it looks like it's all just playing out in the maybe world, but it's going to hit reality very soon. People are going to be. If you look at Argentina, look what happens in Argentina. The same thing that Doge is trying to do here in the United States. Um, in Argentina, when they implemented it, it caused poverty to spike up to an enormous percent. Now, more than 50% of Argentinians are living under the poverty line.
Yeah.
Unemployment is way high. It's shot up to more than 8% recently. But imagine that, half the population under the poverty line. That's could be where we're heading if Doge continues these cuts, and if these cuts are allowed to go through. So yeah, I mean, I will say you're right. You're right in everything you're saying, that these guys could be better at being cruel and vicious, and more organized at being cruel and vicious, and it might hurt people even more. But the reality of it is, even their stumbling attempts is already hurting people.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, but if you're going to and I agree with you. I think it's a hybrid of incompetency and the damage that incompetency can do along the way. You all know the dumbest person in the world is usually the person that causes the most damage and the most injuries. And you go on a field trip with someone, it's the idiot on the field trip that probably breaks someone's arm by mistake because he's just an idiot and he's not paying attention. He's there for the wrong reasons, doing the wrong things. But I have hope, and I've got hope in a place where a lot of people don't, in the fact that, for the first time in human history, you can count on stupidity for a couple of things. Ruining people's lives for a short period of time, but stupidity is not sustainable, right? Being an asshole is not sustainable. And where that's playing out, and I hate to bring it back to Canada and the FiveStack, but I want to encourage everybody today. I think it's really important to do this at the same time that we're ringing alarm bells to get people to see the inside of the bright side, which is, in Canada we have two parties, much like in the United States. They've got Republicans and Democrats. We've got liberals and conservatives. And
Well,
for
we
the
have more.
last,
We
what's
have more.
that?
We have five parties or more actually, but
Not
but
really.
there's two that are in
Nobody stands a
contention.
chance,
Yeah,
dude. Like,
yeah,
you got the NDP, the Green Party, the
yeah.
PPC, but the PPC is run by like a psycho who's like Donald Trump light, but he's also completely fucking stupid. His name's Maxime Bernier. I've interviewed him. Dumbest guy I've ever met in my life. Just the meanest prick who tries to come off like he's not mean prick. Then you got Elizabeth May, who's the head of Green Party. If she's not into a bottle of Pinot by now, I'd be shocked. And then you got the NDP, which is the Communist Party of Canada, effectively going, we should just pay for everybody's shit. Run by a guy named Jagmeet Singh, who runs around in Range Rovers and Versace bags. Like, it's wild. But you really have two main business institutions in Canada vying for the taxpayer bank card, so to speak. And it's been like that for hundreds of years. Liberals, conservatives. So 6 weeks, 8 weeks ago, the Conservative Party of Canada, because we had two very unserious leaders in charge of those parties, in my opinion. Justin Trudeau, who did an affable job in the past couple of years trying to lead this country. I think he did a piss poor job the first several years. Who was very performative. He's a drama teacher. And then you had a career politician named Pierre Poilievre, who's a populist, a moron, a dick, a liar. He's Trump light. I've been singing his praise. He won't get his security clearance. And Canada was sad about the whole thing. Like, really sad, to the point where we're like, let's just vote for Pierre Poilievre and give him a chance. He had a 33% lead in the polls 6 to 8 weeks ago. You put him next to someone serious, okay? Put him next to a guy like Mark Carney, governor of the Bank of Canada, governor of the Bank of England, economic genius, went to Harvard, Oxford, like zero scandals, man of character. You put him right next to Pierre Poilievre. Within 8 weeks, Pierre Poilievre lost that insurmountable lead, and he is going to lose this election and be the biggest embarrassment in Canadian political history because of it. Because you gave him a person of character, right? Someone of character, someone who can do the job and will do the job, who's willing to leave a few $1 million a year behind with Brookfield to go and fix a country and save a country that he was from, that he grew up in. America is not that far away. And the guy that scares the shit out of Donald Trump the most is a guy named Gavin Newsom, who's the governor of California, who's a serious dealer, who's wholly qualified to lead the United States of America. And he's got his own podcast. He's talking to Bannon and Charlie Kirk now. It's weird. But he's doing all the right things. And you put a serious person next to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump, like Pierre Poilievre, is terrified of Mark Carney for obvious reasons. He's going to lose his dick to him. Donald Trump next to a guy like Gavin Newsom is a fraud. It's just so painfully clear to see that he's a fraud. So if Gavin Newsom, someone like that, a serious person, comes along, I'm telling you, dude, it's over. If the Democrats can get their shit together, like the liberals in this country got their shit together by sending, Justin Trudeau out back to go mow the lawn, and if you can do that with the Democratic Party, where you can bring a guy like Gavin Newsom, because listen, politics is about character now for me, for a lot of people. You put a person of character next to a political dickhead, they're going to choose the person of character 100% of the time if their person is in danger, if they feel like they're going to lose. They're going to want a good person instead of a bad person. And that's really, really simple for a lot of people in the United States and Canada to understand. So I would encourage everybody in the United States to know that everybody gets it. We all know that Donald Trump and the people he surrounds himself are sycophants, demagogues, people of terrible character. But that's what we had here for a long period of time in the opposition as well. And then we had a largely ineffective government that just spend to try and look woke. We don't have that anymore. We've got a guy in Mark Carney who is going to not talk about the things that don't really matter. He's going to talk about the things that do. And he wants people to understand that he's here and it's okay. And you can all love this country. And he's going to be a prime minister for everybody. But more importantly, he's wholly qualified and he's a man of character. And I truly do believe, and say what you want about Gavin Newsom's character because he dated Kimberly Guilfoyle for a little, short period of time. But whatever. Everybody has a couple of those, mistakes in their sexual closet. We all have them. But
Guilfoyle is one hell of a mistake.
yeah,
you know,
but it's I would encourage everybody in the United States, and I think if I'm going to have a takeaway from the FiveStack today, and this is my takeaway, is that we're talking about what a country looks like when you give your agency to a man of very fucking poor character. And in Canada, you're seeing the resurgence of why character matters in this country. And I would highly encourage everybody to take a step away from the right, the left, the blue, the red, the Republicans, the Democrats, the conservatives, the liberals, and talk about the people, the character and the values of the
I'm
people.
just going to counter some of what you said because Joe Biden was a man of great character.
Mm-hmm.
Kamala Harris was a woman of great character. You had great candidates there who stood up to this guy Donald Trump, but couldn't quite make it. I still worry that Carney is not a shoo-in. We're still got a month of electioneering ahead of us. Polyev could easily find enough wind in his disinformation and his other efforts to still win this race. It's not a done deal, and it's a mistake for liberals in Canada to be so comfortable that he's going to win. I think that people should be pointing out that this is a very tough race, and that currently they're still neck and neck. And there's a lot that Elon Musk, with the power of X and the amount of money that the conservatives have behind them, and this machine that they have that brought Donald Trump to power in the United States, they can bring Polyev to power in Canada, and they could do it within 37 days. So it's not a done deal. And I think it's a real challenge that everyone suddenly assumes that Carney's going to win. One bad debate or one something, we're one thing away from Polyev still winning the Canadian premiership. And that is a disaster for the world, a disaster for democracy. So people nearly need to focus on getting Carney elected, on making sure that every a member of parliament is elected in every riding. It is not a done deal by any stretch, and there's certainly more conservative MPs running than there are, or candidates running for MP positions than there are liberals. So they have an advantage there. They have a electorate that has been kind of upset with the liberals for a long period of time. This is just the start of the election. Getting too confident, getting too comfortable is super dangerous for liberals and Canadians in general because it could suppress the turnout. It could make everyone think a fair companies are happening when it's not. And then we could be in there at the last few days with Elon Musk pouring a ton of disinformation into the electoral system and Polyev winning because there's still a lot of people who prefer the conservative plank and a lot of people in the conservative world who would like to be part of America. There's some people in Canada who don't mind the idea of the 51st state for economic and other reasons, and those people are voting for the conservative. So
That's 11%, Zev.
it's still
11.
11%, and so we've got Donald Trump, the greatest leader of the so-called free world, even though he's not. The biggest nation in the world, the biggest military in the world, the biggest economy in the world is threatening Canada right now. He really is on Poilievre's side, and he's going to put some muscle in there. And I worry that Canadians are just taking this for granted. As sensible and as smart as Carney is, it's too soon to be so confident about it. We
I
saw that.
personally hang on before
Yeah,
you get out of here.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
confident in the Canadian people to do the right thing, but I'm not confident that a lot of people in this country that have the ability to manage narratives are going to take part in the dark arts like they have to,
I have the same
because
confidence in the American people, and I have complete confidence that, in fact, I think they
I got
did
no
vote
confidence in the
correctly.
American
Well,
people.
that's you, but I've lived there. I love America, and I love everybody there. And I think that they've done is they got dealt a bad hand. I think those elections were potentially rigged. I don't think we have a clue of how they won all 7 swing states. It just seems unreasonable and mathematically fraudulent. But regardless. Kamala Harris ran a huge campaign. Millions of people voted for her. Americans are super smart. They're super capable. They just got beaten by a criminal administration running potentially a criminal election campaign. But we don't know that for sure. But ultimately, it is pretty weird that they won the way they did.
So
And why
weird.
Donald Trump made all those weird admissions along the way about Elon Musk rigging the vote and about not needing any other votes from people. I mean, all that kind of stuff is too weird to just ignore. I think Americans are Canada in 37 days from now, we could be in the same fate as America had with Donald Trump suddenly, a Donald Trump-like figure becoming the prime minister.
And
You
that's a
can't take this for
disaster.
granted. You can't
No,
take it for granted.
and I'll tell you what, that's a disaster.
Yeah.
Because if that does happen, let's just game that out real quick before I let you go.
Mhm.
Canada is the last bulkhead of democracy for Western civilization.
Yeah.
Like it is.
Absolutely.
We are Juno Beach, and what's behind Juno Beach is riches and history and culture and freedom and happiness and quality of life. The United States has fallen. Canada is it. And if we elect Pierre Poilievre, who will make it incredibly easy for Donald Trump to get whatever the fuck he wants out of this country, if we elect him, Western civilization, democracy in the West is done. Is done because Pierre Poilievre, on several occasions, not only has repeated all the talking points, but he's talked about using notwithstanding clauses to do things that are un-Canadian, that are against human rights in Canada. He is exactly that person. So the importance, as you pointed out, to stay vigilant, and not only stay vigilant, but keep repeating the messaging. Keep comparing resumes. Keep telling people what's at stake. I have faith that Canada will do that where America failed. Now, does Elon Musk have a big swinging dick
I
up
don't
here
think,
when it comes to...
America did not fail. America tried
You don't
to
think
do,
so?
America did not fail. America tried very hard. I covered that election incredibly closely. And I, was a huge fan of the
77
Biden
million people
administration.
voted for that guy.
Yeah, and we think 77 million people, according to the numbers, but we're not even sure if that's true. But it's only 77 million people. I don't believe it really. I don't believe that was a turnout. Look, do I think Kamala Harris could have been a stronger candidate? Yes, but did they put in a huge effort that was remarkable in terms of its grassroots effort, in terms of the amount of people that kept showing up at her events, where barely any were showing up at Donald Trump's events? None of that makes sense to me. I think what we're saying about America now, that this is America's fault or Americans failed, is not true. I think America has been attacked by the enemies of democracy, by a Russian operated and Chinese funded operation to get Donald Trump elected the president of the United States. And they have been captured. And now Canada could be captured by the same dark forces. And we have to be incredibly vigilant, because I think it could happen. There's as good a 50% chance that Poilievre could be the Prime Minister of Canada in 30 something days. And we need to understand that that is not only possible, it's maybe even likely, because that's how we got to operate as we move into this next election, where this current prime minister has never been elected in any office. There is a tremendous amount of pressure on Canada. You're absolutely right. The world depends on Canada. The American people depend on Canada making the right choice for Carney. Every free human being in the world will want Carney to win, but that is exactly why it's going to be very difficult for him to win. And I think it's naive to think that there won't be a disinformation campaign like we've never seen before, and that the Russians, the Indians, the Chinese, whoever's in our election system manipulating away as they always have, won't be manipulating these. And as you mentioned, the national media is all controlled by these various different forces. It is so important that Canadians understand how critical this election is for the entire planet. And if you're not out there working your ass off for your local MP right now, your Liberal candidate right now, or whatever party, but hopefully it's a Liberal party because they're the most likely to win the pro-democracy vote here. You're not doing enough. You got to get out there. You got to push hard and hope that Carney can pull it off. It's going to be a very, very difficult thing to pull off, and if he does, it'll be, frankly, I think, a bit of a miracle.
Don't disagree with you. As much faith as I have in the Canadian people and as calm as I seem, I agree with every one of those sentiments. Hypervigilance, get out, talk to people, retweet the truth, talk about who's qualified and who isn't, continually pound that home. Don't worry about the result, just worry about the process of making sure that if you are Canadian and you want Canada to remain in Canada, you don't want to be the 51st state, continually pound away at the things that are important, continually support the party that you know is going to keep Canada Canada, and it is not Pierre Poilievre. And the stakes have never been higher. This election is not about left or right anymore. It was for years before this election was called. This election is about, are you Canadian and are you not? Do you believe in democracy or do you not? And if you do believe in democracy, you're not voting for Donald Trump and Elon Musk's guy. It's really fucking simple.
It's the most important election Canada has ever had, and the entire world is watching it. So hopefully, the Canadian people realize what's important and do make the right choice come the election day. That's the end of Substack tonight. But Dean, everyone should follow your Substack, which is blowing up right now. It's deanblundell.substack.com. Everyone should be on that and sharing it with your friends and family. It's a fantastic read every day. You always have great insights, great analysis, and the kind of news you really need to know about from both sides of the border. And you can also follow Dean at It's Blundell on X or Twitter. You can follow my Substack. It's at narrative.org, NARATIV.org. And you can follow me at Zev Shalev on both Substack and on Twitter, X. That's it. Do you want to add anything as we head out?
No, buddy, you look great. Your lips have held up this entire time. The Blistex you
Thank you.
put
Thank
on
you.
really hung in there.
I like
Yeah,
my
yeah.
glowing lips.
You
I'll
do.
put them on live on air for you tomorrow. We'll do this again because Substack returns 5 days a week this week. We'll be back tomorrow at 5:30. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, y'all.